Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fully live Friday episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have our cryptozoology expert, Michael, here to help us go through the hacking news today. Although, Michael, is there much cryptozoology news this week?
I mean, there's always cryptozoology news.
Yeah, I guess it's just whether or not we let you cover it. All right.
Exactly.
Well, hello everyone. Kind of noticed that we're a little bit in a duality today when it comes to our appearance. I'm very kind
Mhm.
of bright and light colored, and Michael's very dark and red colored. I'll let you draw your own conclusions from that, I guess. But let's go ahead and get started talking about the news of the week. So typically, we have Alex here. He's currently getting ready for his workshop over the weekend. So if you are in the Southern California area and you're looking for something cool to do, make sure to check out his nugget hacking workshop he's going to be doing over the weekend. It's going to be super fun, and you can find it on our meetup group, which is
Mhm.
Cyber Weapons Lab LA on Meetup. So check that out. It's going to be really fun. And yeah, so I myself have been doing a little bit of research this week. The research I'm working on is related to being able to make a new type of tracking device. So if we switch over to my screen really quickly, I'm going to be using this little microcontroller that's at the core of our USB nugget to try to make a little Wi-Fi device that scans for nearby Wi-Fi networks, collects a list of their MAC addresses, and then sends it back over a canary token, DNS token. So what that means is anytime it sees an open Wi-Fi network, like a McDonald's Wi-Fi network or a Starbucks Wi-Fi network, it would automatically connect to that network. And even though most of those usually have a captive portal that pops up and requests you to do something before it allows you to successfully load a website, it will allow DNS requests to go out. It just won't send you the reply. So if I have this little device that is scanning around and getting the nearby MAC addresses of Wi-Fi devices and then sending it through any available open Wi-Fi network, I can kind of ping the location of wherever that device is. And I'm experimenting to see whether or not it's possible to use just random open networks in an environment to be able to kind of geolocate where this device is in this way. So it's kind of like a tracker that only uses open Wi-Fi networks to ping its location by sending the MAC address of other nearby Wi-Fi networks, which is really easy to look up from a variety of different APIs that provide location services based on what Wi-Fi networks you can see. So this is a fun little project I've been working on in CircuitPython. It's kind of what I've been working on this week and taking a look at some of the CircuitPython uh, references for all the different like DNS services they provide. So if you have any questions about that project, I'll probably be working on it more next week, but that's kind of what I've been working on. Michael, have you been working on anything interesting this week before we dive into the rest of the news?
Mostly just refining the kinks in that Warshipping video and making sure that finally got published. I know a lot of people were dismayed when that disappeared, but we have finally revived that and gotten that up. So if you were curious about that, wanted to watch it, or tell your friends about it, it's now live on Hack 5, so you can share that.
Yeah. So that episode was definitely a lot to get produced. Oops, I clicked on the wrong one. Where is it? Here it is. So if we want to switch over to my screen, you can see this is the video that took forever to do. We really tried super hard to make this cool little
Oh
device
my
that would
gosh.
demonstrate how warshipping works, but we didn't realize that by implying that we were shipping the device, although we didn't actually, we just recreated
Mhm.
it on each end of our lab. We were potentially encouraging people to commit a crime. So we had to take it down and add a bunch of different warnings, of which my favorite is Michael shouting as a southerny
It's
like
like
police
2 minutes in.
officer. Yeah,
I
two
think
minutes. Where is it?
you're
Um,
pretty.
2 minutes. There we go. Okay, wait, that's me. There we
Uh,
go. No.
yeah, a little past that.
Yeah.
Before that.
Yeah. There. Okay. So yes, there were definitely some warnings that were added there. Some hilarious. Hopefully you enjoy them. But yeah, it's got a lot of good traction. If you haven't seen it already, it's probably my favorite episode that we've done in a very, very long time. So make sure to check it out because we're very proud of it. And Michael got to do some fun research, and so did we. So very, very fun video.
I kind
Um,
of want to post the other edit of my warning on social media, just for the giggles.
oh, feel free. The Hoid shall rise again, as they say. So
Yes.
feel free to post that on your own social media. Um, All right, so let's go ahead and get into the news because there is a lot of it this week. Michael, do you want to start, or I also have a lot to jump into?
I can start.
All right,
So
good.
let's see. Give me a second here. It's gonna be weird because I have to. Okay, there we go. So it's been a pretty bad week for TikTok. Um, Over the weekend, a group called Blue Hornet, aka Against the West, reported on social media that they had access to basically all of the TikTok servers and databases with, I think it was over 790 gigabytes of data, and that included all the source code and everything for TikTok, which kind of spooky. Now, of course, later this previous week, TikTok has come out denying that that data breach really ever happened, and the waters are kind of muddy right now. The proof that was presented on social media could possibly be true, but it's also kind of publicly available, so it's unclear whether or not they actually did get into the servers. But essentially, their claim was that they were able to access this because it was all in one Alibaba cloud instance, which had a poorly secured password. So they were able to. It's unclear how they got that password exactly, or how they purportedly gained that password, but um, they say they did. Um, but even worse for TikTok. But I guess this is sort of good news too. Microsoft researchers found a vulnerability in the TikTok app, which allowed one-click account hijacking. Essentially, you know those links when you click on the link on your phone and instead of going to a browser, it goes to the app, right?
Yeah.
So those JavaScript bridges, they were able to take advantage of that and then take advantage of a flaw in the TikTok app, which allowed a specifically crafted URL to bypass some protections in the app and just arbitrarily open any web page. So essentially, by crafting a URL that would open in the app and then load any web page, regardless of whether or not it had valid certificates or anything like that. So you could open a malicious web page that then had JavaScript or something that ran. And this could potentially allow you to post as the person on TikTok. It could allow you to download all their stories, like all their stuff, and change your password, like anything you could do while logging into TikTok, basically.
Hmm.
So luckily, this was reported, and I believe has been patched at this point.
Still scary. Like a single click exploit. I mean, most people aren't looking out for that. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
it's only one mistake you need to make.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, over on my screen, let's get started diving into fog data science. And Michael, I know that you've also looked into this. So this was part of the Electronic Frontier Foundation's investigation into data brokers that are targeting increasingly smaller and smaller police agencies by positioning themselves as a better alternative to doing the long established precedent of requesting information from a company, which require like Google, which requires a court order and a certain amount of time to process. They've been saying that they can get that information in a matter of days, and kind of implying also that it maybe doesn't require a court order or process because of the way that the data is gathered. It's like public or opt-in is what they claim. So if we take a look at some of the specifics, we can see that Fog Data Science has been attempting to send out this marketing material to smaller police agencies and requires about like a $10,000 or so per month subscription. And what they're claiming to do is be able to take applications, and they're naming a lot of different ones, but they specifically named Waze and a couple other apps like Starbucks, use that sort of data that has been anonymized with a hash, and then just taking that hashed account information and comparing it from other data brokers to stitch everything together into a large pool of data. Now, what's interesting here is the marketplace. They are not the ones actually collecting the data. They're just somebody who is a portal to this data that is organizing it specifically for law enforcement and kind of pitching it as a way around the normal process of being able to get a warrant. So some of the actual brochures that have been put out are actually available. So if you want to check out what this product actually looks like, there are brochures that were delivered to the Chino Police Department that pretty much spell out the benefits, exactly how much it costs, their presentation, that they have 250 million US digital devices monthly, 15 billion signals collected daily globally. And what they're also saying is that you can find where people sleep, you can find where people live. You can take an area that you're interested in, draw a box around it, and then find out who was there. And not only that, but where they go to bed, like where they go to school, where they go to work, like where they go to eat. These are called patterns of life that allow a police officer to very easily determine who someone is by just stitching all these details together and then kind of just connecting the dots. So this is metadata at its most extreme. It might be anonymized to a certain extent, but then it's stitched back together and sold to police agencies with this interface that allows them to very easily start snagging people in this sort of like data web. So you can also expect that like anybody who attends a protest, like it's as simple as just drawing a box around the protest, and you can start to find out information about everybody who was there. This is something that has been pitched for a lot of different uses, some of them extremely invasive. And what's also the most concerning about this company doesn't have a lot of regulation around what it's able to do. The data that it collects is allegedly public data. And they claim over and over that this is an opt-in process, that on some level, everybody's opted into this data collection. And that might be true for the specific application that person is using. But if that application involves background collection of data, or if it just pings every time you open it, then what it could mean is that the app is actually making a bunch of extra money by selling it to a data broker who sells it to this main data broker that primarily serves the government, but also serves some private entities. And then this ends up in the hands of companies like this. So fog data science has been implicated also as being like kind of loose about their standards for who gets access to this data. And what I mean by that is it appears as though they allow private entities to make requests and they just do the analytics for it. So while they don't allow like a law firm, for example, direct access to their data, they do allow private entities to make queries, which they do the intelligence behind and then just deliver the result. So like the fact that this is targeted at law enforcement, uses extremely invasive tracking technology, and then turns around and offers the same product to essentially just like civilians in exchange for money means that anybody can be tracked. I mean, provided that you have a connection with like a lawyer, a private investigator, or somebody who, can just make a request to this company to look somebody up and give them the results. So this is a very scary development in the way that these sorts of data brokers trade data between themselves and target specific groups in order to make more money, because these services that are being offered to small police departments often completely violate due process and can also be offered to private entities that have no real reason and no legal right to be looking into where people sleep, worship, where they might get healthcare, or maybe if they've been to an immigration office. These are all things that are very sensitive to someone's pattern of life. And being able to just scoop up all this information as a private company or even as a police officer with no like process, that is a very disturbing thing. And that's why the EFF is going after this particular organization, because of the way that they're marketing their data and because of their extensive ties to some very large data brokers. So, yeah, this is just kind of an opener for anybody that uses apps that collect a lot of information. You might wonder who would pay so much money to learn your location, all the time. Like, why are all these applications making all this side money on your data? Well, it's because brokers like this are able to get around huge problems that law enforcement have with legalities and like getting like warrants and getting like signed letters from a judge. If these sorts of low-cost data brokers are able to appeal to smaller police departments, it makes it much more likely that these sorts of invasive searches are going to be done routinely. And they're not always presented when the person's arrested later on, because these all often have like restrictions in the way the existence of the technology can be revealed. And they'll often cite like proprietary, like, this and that. But in reality, it kind of creates an imbalance for like defendants or people who are charged with crimes that were investigated or kind of like proven using this technology. because it's imperfect. And while there's a lot of invasive potential for this, it still doesn't work very well because most of the police agencies that bought this product either didn't renew it or sought refunds. So it doesn't seem like the user experience of many of these police agencies was worth $10,000 a year. But the threat that companies like this present is still very real. And that's why this investigation was so important and why you should be paying attention to it, because data brokers are getting increasingly sophisticated at this sort of thing.
Did I miss it, or did you talk about the federal features of that program, Cody?
Oh,
So,
no, go for it.
okay, a big problem with this is, obviously they market themselves as completely anonymizing the data, and as Cody touched on, you can click on any individual, and it's got a unique ID, so you can see where all that one device has been, which allows you to track it back to a home or a location like that. But there are federal features. It's unclear whether or not these are actually being sold to federal law enforcement. But as far as the back end, the federal feature set allows you to gain much more insight into the device, including IP addresses. And instead of being confined to a geolocation search, you can also search by an IP address.
Hmm.
And then also it shows like all the kind of fingerprinting that you would normally get from devices. So like, browser user agents and things like that, which could be further used to identify a device or, correlate other data sources with that device.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's some things that might be litigious if they were used, like
Mm-hmm.
in circumstances that weren't like with federal authority, and it's just kind of gaining insight into the kind of the can of worms that could be opened if they were able to just market this however they wanted. And also, you can see in the section I'm highlighting that this company firmly believes that they do not need any sort of warrant to access this sort of data. So in order to find out like every detail of your pattern of life, this company is telling law enforcement that law enforcement does not need even a reasonable suspicion to investigate you in order to use this service. So that's fun, right? Just knowing that anybody connected to a police agency or anybody
Mm-hmm.
connected to a lawyer's office could look up everything you do just for money, and not for any reasonable reason. There doesn't seem to be any accountability, and there doesn't seem to be any like way of verifying if this is like a legitimate search or if it's someone looking up their ex-girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
which we've seen with the existing police technology that's already happened. So
Yeah,
and that was with a system
Mhm.
that required a signed letter from a judge, and the guy just uploaded blank documents, and it just let him do it.
Mhm.
So if people are already getting around these like good faith systems, and this is a blatantly bad faith system, like what are they going to do with it?
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying. It is like, in theory, you want to think that the police are this ideal agency who are, never going to abuse power, but ultimately all power corrupts. And, I do think that's why it is like important to have these systems in place that are going to make sure that these bits of information aren't used for evil, right? Like, a lot of these programs do have the potential to do a lot of good, but they also have a lot of potential to do bad as well.
Yep. So also worth noting that there's at the top of this is a huge data broker that primarily sells to Ventel, that it primarily sells to the government. They're the largest or one of the largest data
Mhm.
brokers to the government, and they are providing a portal to the smaller service into their data set and allowing them to like mix and match and customize it and design queries and stuff for law enforcement. So that's kind of what's happening here is like a larger data broker has allowed a smaller data broker to effectively customize their data and present it in a way that allows law enforcement to access it and then make money in the middle. So interesting business model, but also pretty evil because of the way it erodes at people's civil liberties and right to due process. So real bad job at helping out society on this one. All right, Michael, over to you.
Okay. There is a very faint echo of me on your side, so I'm gonna mute you while I present.
Sure.
So we have another piece of malware here that we've talked about in the past on previous weeks. It's the Sharkbot malware. And this is sneaked onto the Google Play Store to, hold up, switch over to my screen. I just realized. There we go. So Sharkbot Malware sneaks back onto the Google Play Store. And so how they're able to do this is essentially they submit it for review, and it's completely clean. However, after that, they upload an update which injects the malicious code. Now, since Google's review is automatic and there's nothing on there to begin with, it doesn't catch anything, and then it's put into Play Store and authorized. However, eventually, once they install the update, then they're able to perform all kinds of malicious actions, including intercepting SMS text, and more importantly, stealing cookies, which allows them to hack your bank account. So, for instance, you have a Bank America app or some other banking app. You open that up on your phone, then it will save that cookie, and that allows the Sharkbot malware to get access to your bank account and potentially drain your account. And, okay, you're unmuted now.
You can
I don't know.
So yeah. I'm also I'm wearing headphones now. So
okay, cool.
There you go.
Hopefully that fixes that issue. Otherwise,
yeah. So all right, so I've got some more stuff. Last week we were talking about Cloudflare and how they were under a lot of pressure to drop kiwi farms, and how they had introduced the concept of like carbon offset for hate, and they would like host these like terrible websites that would like openly call for like queer people to be killed or trans people to be killed, and then like donate $1,000 to the Trevor Fund or whatever, and like call it good. Obviously, a lot of people thought that was super dumb because it is super dumb. And after making that statement, they were like, oh, oops, that was super dumb. And their shareholders were like, could you not do that? So they dropped kiwi farms. Pretty obvious that this was going to happen to me anyway last week, but you know, there you go. So interesting to see that, you know, the final amount of internet pressure like won out over like corporate interest in this, like, again, very, very silly like scheme where like they would like balance by like donating, by like hosting and whatever. I'm really glad that they've just decided to like eliminate a website that was just pure hate speech. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. The end of that loop was pretty much exactly what you would expected. They dropped the website that was openly calling for the murder of people.
That's good.
Also worth noting, during all this, a lot of people were kind of bringing up their experiences with Cloudflare. And it was interesting to note that Cloudflare had literally lobbied the FTC to investigate the legality of researchers just doing their normal research into the way Cloudflare operates. Like, they didn't like being researched, and they tried to get the government to make it illegal to research them. So that's fun. That's how they spent some of their money. Obviously, it didn't work, but yeah, a lot of things to be in the news for all in 1 week. So hopefully things settle down over there at Cloudflare, because it certainly seems as though they've had an interesting couple of weeks. All right, so some more business news. If you've been following Flipper Zero, it is a really cool microcontroller-based like hacking tool that allows you to do all sorts of interesting hacking stuff. But the way that it's being developed is very different from the way that Alex and I have been developing our HackCat tool. We have been starting with a small prototype and slowly adding functionality over time, whereas Flipper Zero has taken on millions of dollars of investment, developed a full-fledged product, hired like an entire team, and then started rolling out this product. I really admire that because it is risky and it's high stakes, but they made it happen. And things were going pretty well up until PayPal blocked about $1.3 million worth of funds from newly purchased units that is now preventing them from making their next purchase of components. So this has been a thread on Twitter. I haven't seen that this has been resolved yet, although I should probably check before I start calling out PayPal. Nope, looks like things are still stuck. So this is a very interesting case. If you happen to know anyone at PayPal and you want to explain what this Flipper Zero is to them, there's a lot of different things kind of flying around. Some people are saying like, because a couple of the employees might be in Russia, although a lot of them are in Ukraine, that maybe they're trying to block the money. Maybe there's some other reason where somebody misinterpreted this as like a malicious hacking device and PayPal doesn't want to support it. It's really kind of hard to say because, you know, we as creators also of a microcontroller-based hacking tool for learning are a little concerned about this. You know, like, what if PayPal decides to freeze our funds? We don't really use PayPal, But if they did decide to turn against us, it would be very worth it for us to know what exactly they didn't like about this. So I wish the team at Flipper Zero all the best. I'm so sorry about this happening to all of you. I've seen some of the team members on Twitter seeming very distressed about this, and I understand when something horrible like this happens to your hard work, it's really, really hard to figure out what to do next. So yikes. Yeah, I just have a lot of admiration for all the work that they've done. They've really managed to put this tool together very quickly, and people really seem to love it. So seeing that this happened really makes me sad, because they've been taking in a lot more risk than we have when it comes to scaling up very quickly. I mean, we're just doing our first run of 500, and it is still scary. So thinking of doing an order of $1.3 million is even scarier, and I can't imagine what it's like to have that caught up. So yeah, my heart goes out to them. And then last piece that I want to cover that's business related is it seems as though Patreon has laid off their entire security team. I'm seeing this on just InfoSec Twitter. There's a lot of people from that security team that are out now looking for work. So if you run a security team and you're looking for some excellent people, I've heard that they're really, really good. But yeah, always an interesting scenario when a company lays off their entire security team. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that, especially for a company that manages a bunch of people's money and campaigns and stuff. You would think that they would want to have a big security team, but times change. We'll see how that strategy pans out for them.
You don't need a security team,
That seems to be the theory they're testing there. So we'll circle back to this one in a couple weeks. I feel like
embrace the ransomware.
No, they'll either have a brand new shiny security team, or we'll circle back to this one way or another. All right, back over to you.
Cool. So it's our favorite vulnerable company, QNAP.
Oh, I was gonna ask if it's more Deadbolt. Are we doing Deadbolt again?
Yeah. So
is it serious? I was just guessing. Is that serious?
Yeah, it's Deadbolt. So there's another vulnerability in the PhotoScan app on QNAP hardware. So, and again, their advice here is disable port forwarding function on your router. And basically, I guess what they're saying is their NASs should be used for local use only. Now, the problem with all of this is UPnP, right? So it's a protocol which allows devices on the network to automatically connect to the internet and port forward themselves so they're publicly available.
What does it stand for?
Plug and play? I don't know.
Universal plug and play.
Yeah.
Right. By the way, someone in the chat says you're slaying that outfit, Michael. And also that their teeth hurt and they want to punch themselves in the teeth.
Okay.
This is live. We are reading it. Sorry, go on, Michael.
But yes, and some commenters have mentioned that UPnP is one of the worst things for security besides an open Wi-Fi network. And in fact, if you do have it, if you can mind the inconvenience, then I would definitely recommend turning it off on your network, because it really does seem to cause a lot more vulnerabilities than it does good. So definitely something to consider, because it seems like at least once a month we hear about QNAP or one of these other NAS companies getting hit with this sort of ransomware. So yeah, definitely something to watch out for.
Oh my God, you guys, I'm dying. So the people in the chat are suggesting that so someone create a Patreon for the security researchers at Patreon that pays them out when Patreon gets hacked. That is a beautiful.
I love that, actually. Yes, we should start that Patreon.
That's I'm not going to start it, but somebody else can start it, because I think that's a beautiful idea. Thank you for that. All right. So I've got a couple more things. One thing I want to shout out is if we switch over to my screen, our friend Jacoby comes up with so many awesome payloads, and he just put out a new video, which is Shortcut Jacker. So I got the pleasure of watching through this video last night, and I really, really like it. In fact, I think we're going to invite him to do some stuff with us on Hack5 soon. So if you want to check out a really awesome payload, then you can check this one out. And yeah, I liked it a lot. I actually learned a lot about the way that shortcuts work and the way you can manipulate them. And he did a really excellent job of explaining why this is such a nefarious and sneaky payload. So definitely check it out because I like it a lot, and you'll probably be seeing more of him on Hack5 soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right, more news. So we also have some. You might have seen in the news that Albania had basically ejected all of the Iranian diplomats from the country and severed diplomatic ties. This is in response to increasingly bold cyber attacks against state services that temporarily shut down its ability to offer online services to its citizens. So, being a NATO member state, this attracted the attention of the FBI and a bunch of other agencies, and eventually this was pretty definitively tied back to the Iranian government's intelligence agency. So this, a diplomatic reaction, and this bad threat actor has been on the radar for quite some time, and it's been suspected that they've been kind of connected to Iranian intelligence. But this latest attack really directed a lot of attention onto uncovering who this was. So it seems as though this group is either directly controlled by them or actually is the intelligence agency executing cyber attacks on behalf of the Iranian government. So yeah, more intrigue and masking in the cyber espionage world, but in this case, tied back to the Iranian government. Or Michael, you want to talk about the Vice Society?
Oh, yeah, that's not the one I had prepared for next, but
All right, I can lead in. So the Los Angeles Unified School District is one of the largest school districts in the country, the second, which kind of surprises me. I thought they'd be the first, but whatever. They have been hit by a ransomware attack that also claims to have stolen 500 gigabytes of data from their network. Also, the Vice Society representative apparently told Bleep Computer this directly. So I love that they have a PR department to manage their ransomware gang. Kind of is interesting considering some of these larger, very much hunted and well-known ransomware gangs just melted into the ether, and then suddenly these very professional actors are coming out of nowhere with their support services, very business-like. Interesting. Anyway, the FBI and the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency are on the case, trying to figure out who these people are and what to do about this attack against LA Unified School District. And yeah, they definitely have been known to use ransomware and double exploitation, as it's called, in their tactics before. And that means that if nobody decides to pay the ransom, they can still threaten to leak sensitive information on the internet or turn around and sell it to other people who might be more interested in it. So this technique gives the threat actors a much better chance to make money on their attack. So it typically smacks of commercially motivated actors who are tied to some of these very sophisticated cybercrime games.
cool.
All right, Michael, you ready to talk more about the group?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, sorry. One detail I thought was very funny about this, the attack was so bad that it is now required to reset your password in person after the ransomware attack. So all these LAUSD administrators are having to go, all district employees, teachers, staff, administrators have to go into a physical office in order to reset their password and set up 2FA, because they're just we don't trust this anymore. It's just there's too many people, too many problems. So it is the infrastructure they're having to put up to get all this taken care of, and the amount of investment in human time it's going to take to get everybody registered and enrolled and stuff is crazy. So the security incident response for this is ongoing and has reached proportions that it's just going to take up lots of man hours at this point to fully fix this problem.
Yeah, I was thinking that cannot be an elegant solution for such a large school district. So I don't have too much more to add on this, besides what Kody was kind of mentioning, that so the FBI has issued a warning about Vice Society. It's not a specific ransomware. They use several different strains of ransomware, but they're a group, and they're really seeming to target these school districts. Now, obviously school districts don't have, huge budgets, which I think also is the reason they're getting targeted, is because they don't have, huge security budgets. That especially what's being targeted here is K through 12 institutions. So we're not talking about big universities that might have more of a defensive cyber budget. We're talking about pretty small school districts, including some larger school districts, that might be more vulnerable to these sorts of attacks. And it seems, according to the FBI brief here, that they're using compromised credentials and exploiting internet-facing applications. So when they say compromised credentials, I'm not sure if that's like, leaked credentials where they're just trying like, the sort of attack where it's like a
Password
teach.
spraying.
Yeah, exactly. Password spraying.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say like password spraying, like reused credentials are going to be the number one thing. Is like if they're reusing their credentials in multiple places, then it's obvious, that it's going to be an easy target. And then phishing attacks, obviously.
Yeah, and we're always preaching about like phishing is always the lowest hanging fruit. It seems at this point because most systems are locked down enough that it's easier for the attacker to just phish a user. And I could easily imagine that's the sort of thing that's happening in these situations. Uh, you know, but yeah, I have another story to talk about unless you have something you want to talk about.
I sure do. Let's get through this one real fast because
Okay.
it's partially dumb and partially brilliant, and I want all of you to decide which it really is. All right, so this is an attack where you can use a GIF in Microsoft Teams to do a bunch of bad things. There are some qualifiers here, and that's where this is kind of dumb, but also kind of smart. So this is called GIFShell. And the first thing is that they missed the opportunity to call this GIF in the shell, which would have been so much funnier and a great callback to Ghost in the Shell. But you guys blew it, and that's my first critique on this. So next up is the fact that in order to do this, you have to use a bunch of Microsoft Team flaws and vulnerabilities. You have to bypass team security controls to allow external users to send attachments to team users, modify send attachments to have users download files from an external URL rather than the generated SharePoint, spoof Microsoft Team attachments to appear as homeless files, insecure URIs. There's like a lot here. It kind of seems like a lot of work. So I'm like, is this worth it? So let me explain exactly what's going on here. So let's say that you are attacking a relatively well-defended environment and it's using Microsoft Teams, and you manage to get that person to run a stager. Now, what is a stager? A stager is a little piece, a first piece of a malicious program that is going to be looking for further instructions. And it's going to set up the environment to do bad stuff, but it's not going to do anything that's going to trigger antivirus or trigger any of the defenses. It's just going to infect the system in a way that is not initially malicious, but provides a little bit of a backdoor functionality. So once the stager is initialized on the device, that could be a malicious email, like a USB stick that's left, and then someone whatever. There's a lot of different ways this could happen, but still slightly dumb that, it requires that first. But let's say that is up and ready to go. Well, how exactly is that stager going to get its malicious commands sent to it? There's a lot of different ways that could happen, but let me propose one. How about a GIF in Microsoft Teams? So the way this works is you would send the victim this malicious GIF that contains the instructions for your stager to do something bad. And it would hit that person's Microsoft Teams and then be saved into a file that is like a DLL file or something that has access, that even low privileged users have access to. So the attacker can then extract it. Oh, there's the GIF. Cute. It's a little Pikachu. The program can then, the stager can extract it from this file that is holding all the, GIFs and stuff you get from Microsoft Teams, extract the malicious information from it, and then run it. And it's a way of establishing a communications channel with your stager that's just using a GIF in Microsoft Teams, and thus would be really difficult to tell where that came from. So this also bypasses a lot of the protections built up Teams to prevent malicious information from being sent by encoding it into the GIF in a way that makes all that scanning, because they just don't bother to scan GIFs in that way. So by taking advantage of this loophole in the way that Microsoft scans things that are going through Microsoft Teams, the attackers were able, or the researchers in this case, were able to communicate with their stager and get it to execute commands that normally would trigger like antivirus or some sort of defense. But in this case, they were smuggling it in and relying on the stager to then pick it up and execute it in the background. Very sneaky, slightly dumb. I'll let you decide which one it ultimately is.
Oh my gosh.
All right, back to you, Michael.
Okay, so here I've got. Let me switch over to my screen. So we've all heard of ransomware as a service. Well, now we have phishing as a service. So it's not exactly a brand new idea, but the newest contender in this space is Evil Proxy. So you may have, in previous months, what's the other one that tried this? Frappo is another phishing as a service. But essentially, it seems that in the dark cyber world, it's a more lucrative business model to just provide these specific services, such as phishing. And what's really spooky about this is basically making really advanced methods of phishing which bypass two-factor authentication pretty readily available. I mean, it's not free or dirt cheap, but it's about like they're offering this on for around $400 to $600 a month, which means it's going to be available for a lot of different threat actors. And essentially, what they're using is a adversary in the middle attack technique. Essentially, they clone a website and then present that website to the user, and then they just pass the information back and forth to the legitimate website, so that way they can intercept the two-factor authentication code, the cookies, and that sort of information. And then they have this set up for a number of popular websites here, including Apple iCloud, Facebook, Google, but more scarily, things like GitHub, which are used obviously for maintenance of software. And that means that this sort of advanced phishing attack could, in theory, be used as the precursor to a supply chain attack. And, that's very scary too, because, $600 and a person could potentially pull off a supply chain attack. And depending on what they targeted, that could be pretty devastating.
So, couple last things in our last 10 minutes I want to go through. One of them is we've touched on the Wi-Fi Coconut before. Michael, do you remember what the Coconut is?
Yeah, basically it's a passive Wi-Fi scanning device which allows you to scan all 14 2.4 gigahertz simultaneously, even though 2 of those channels aren't supposed to be used in the US. It's kind of surprising.
Who knows where you might wander, Michael? Maybe you want to be able to see everything in Japan as well.
That's what I was about to say. Is it's kind of surprising once you start monitoring those channels, where you see those signals.
So if you switch over to my screen, one of the things that's recently been updated for using the Wi-Fi Coconut is Hoover. So Hoover is a program that allows you to see probe requests. And of course, it can see a lot more than probe requests. The Coconut can see a lot more than probe requests, but it can see them on all channels simultaneously, which makes it pretty interesting for this purpose because it allows you to see any Wi-Fi network that nearby devices are requesting in real time. Now, for me, as a researcher who's trying to find as many different networks that are in people's phones as possible, so it can make lists of them for statistical and testing research purposes, of course, getting on a subway and letting this thing rip sounds awesome to me because I could get a huge list of different Wi-Fi network names that are currently stored in people's phones. So yeah, this sounds great, actually. I'm going to use this. I actually am going to use this right after the show because it sounds wonderful. Of course, you could gather this information via Kismet or some other things, but I really like this simple way of doing it. So definitely going to give it a try, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the results are. Also, we have been in a heat wave in Los Angeles for the last 5 days, and the computers are finally giving up. I've seen multiple different billboards and other random computers in the wild that cannot handle the heat and are just dying, shutting down, or otherwise revealing their operating systems. In this case, our moderator Zam pointed out this is probably just a sneaky advertisement for Linux. It's been converted for an advertisement from whatever the store is to an advertisement for Linux. Oh yeah, see.
Well, at least we don't have to worry about Skynet now, because climate change will take them out.
I guess we'll see. But certainly some of these computers really don't like it. And then speaking of computers, I was going through one of our videos last night, actually a video that's going to be released soon with David Bombal. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be all about Wi-Fi hacking. I was using a Wi-Fi microcontroller in this video, or rather it showed up in a scan. And I always like to go through and Google it or go on wigle.net and look up the MAC address and see what the location history of a particular wireless network is. And in this case, I typed in the MAC address of the weather sensor I've had operating in my backyard for the last 2 years or so, expecting maybe that we got a ping there and that we'd have to hide it. And instead, the only ping was at a hackerspace in Germany in 2020. In January, I think the 8th of January, where I was doing a demonstration at this hackerspace, momentarily turned it on while I had Wigle running, and then uploaded it later. Or somebody else in the audience was also war driving. So it's just funny to see that like these devices have a history. And like I actually went ahead and took also, I think it was a like an Apple like airport or like something like that I bought off Craigslist a long time ago, and was like, oh, I should probably look this up and make sure it's not linked to my address. I typed it in, and it was linked to the previous owner's address in like San Francisco, where I've never lived. So I could tell where my router had been before I bought it off of like eBay or whatever, years ago, just by being able to, type it into wiggle.net. So if you've never done this, it's super interesting and fun. You can find out like where your printer's history, is, where the lineage of your printer is from, if it had an owner before you, oftentimes. And I found it very funny that like this random microcontroller I selected from a bin that had been operating outside was also the very same one that I taught a class in Germany with. So just a fun little use of wiggle.net, and an interesting case of a coincidence while looking to make sure we weren't doxing ourselves. All right, Michael, you got anything else?
Yeah, I got some stuff here. Give me a second. Multitasking. So as we know, people love to cheat at video games, but
not ethical people, Michael.
Okay, a lot of users cheat at video games, and this has devastating effects on Minecraft, because apparently Minecraft cheats and mods and stuff like that are pretty much the most infected thing you can download on the internet, it seems. So essentially, hackers love using these game mods and cheats, and maybe a game's in beta, and so they release it on these forums, and then they insert ransomware or other malware to devastating effect. And the study done on this actually shows the games that are most targeted, and some of them might surprise you, others might not. Roblox is number 2. Need for Speed, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, basically all the most popular video games. So, if you are downloading anything from the internet, just be very careful. And, the real trouble with a lot of this too is that some completely mundane mods that you might use for like Skyrim or any other game you play might require you to turn off antivirus because of false positives that various antiviruses will pop up on these modifications. However, that again presents a great opportunity for these malicious hackers to come in and insert their own malware into similar modifications.
So somebody else in the chat was also asking whether or not the technique of looking up a MAC address and seeing the history of the device works with laptops. Yeah, it should. And you actually just reminded me that I should totally do that with my new old ThinkPad that used to be part of like a corporate fleet, and see maybe where it's been in the past. I've also found that you can sometimes grab like random like hotspots and then tie together the locations that somebody has turned on their hotspot on their phone, because often that MAC address doesn't change, or at least in older versions of like iOS and Android, it did not change. So I found like one time there was some lady's random hotspot that I saw in a nearby graveyard, and I was like, that's weird. It was like over, yeah. And I managed to take the information, type it into Wigle, and then find every other location that this lady had turned on her hotspot. I know it was a lady because, it was like Crystal Springs, like iPhone hotspot or whatever. So it was interesting to see that you could start linking together that information about where people had turned on certain features on their wireless devices, or maybe seeing where a device had been before I purchased it. So if you haven't checked it out, it's free, it's super awesome, and you can use Wigle Wi-Fi on an Android phone to contribute to this giant map of different devices, and that includes cell phone towers, Bluetooth devices, and other interesting things that allow you to do interesting research, like being able to find like cell site simulators that move and things like that. So
interesting. We're getting pretty close to the end of our time here. Do you have any other final news?
Are we able to submit addresses to get removed from Wigle? I have to do this all the time. Yes. So every 6 months or so, I have a list of MAC addresses I send them, and I'm like, hi, we messed up. So I love using Wigle, and I always forget to turn it off. And I accidentally uploaded all of these MAC addresses that are right at my house. And they're just like, well, you should stop doing that. But they always are very nice about that. Someone also says, you and I both need some sunlight. Do you know what it's doing to people? It's so hot, it's killing computers outside. I'm not going out there. I'm perfectly fine in my bunker at the moment.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a couple...
end up getting the farmer's tan. So don't recommend that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So last piece of news I'm going to go through, just because we have a couple minutes, is the U.S. has recovered $30 million of the funds stolen from Axie Infinity. I believe that was not all of it. I think that there was a lot more to that theft. However, the attackers are finding out that it is in fact very difficult to steal cryptocurrency on a large scale. So they've been going through, and the North Korean hackers have been attempting to send stolen ether to intermediary wallets, mix the ether in batches using Tornado Cash, swap the ether for Bitcoin, and then mix the Bitcoin with batches. But unfortunately, they're not able to really find a good way to cash this out. And oh yeah, it was 620 million total. So that's not all of it. But because these companies are by and large like in the United States, the FBI has a long held tradition of just walking into their offices and telling them to give them the cash. So it's kind of hard for the North Korean government to like do much about that when, you know, these companies are often in the United States or in a friendly company that allows the United States to just be like, no, that's our Bitcoin now. We're going to use that to go buy more invasive software, which, by the way, it was actually asset forfeiture that paid for that software that's being used to track you without a warrant. So police taking away stuff from people, maybe not even necessarily criminals, and then selling it is what is funding the software that's getting around your constitutional right to process that. Anyway, I think that's about it. We'll just lightly touch on this. Ukraine has dismantled more bot farms that are spreading Russian disinformation. The biggest part of the story is just seeing what it looked like for me. This is what apparently a bot farm looks like. It's just a fat server on a rack and then a bunch of like mobile antennas.
Wow.
Right? So like it seems like there's some parts of the system that need to be physical, like the actual like mobile antenna and equipment that's registered to mobile phones and stuff in, I guess, like Belarus and Russia. And what they were doing is using the server to like virtualize like tons of things and then connecting them to these like USB plugged in like cellular like sticks of whatever sort they are, and then pretending to be a bunch of different phones or like devices all spreading Russian propaganda and misinformation. And they're turning around and selling this service to like any Russians that wanted to use it to spread misinformation. So this was actually disrupted in Ukraine, like in Kiev. So kind of interesting, not only to see what the equipment looks like, that's really the only part about the story I care about, but also the fact that it was operating inside the country and was able to be disrupted by domestic security services. I love that the the splitter is like an integral part of this cybercrime setup.
Nice.
All right, so that's about all the time we have for today. If we missed a story that you're interested in, please feel free to drop it in the comments and we'll try to cover it next week. You can also catch us on Wednesday for our live Q&A, where we will be on the Hack5 channel as well as the Security 4 channel. And of course, make sure to check out that last video we posted on the Hack5 channel. We're super proud of it. I think it went really well. We'd love some feedback on it too. So yeah, and of course, have any questions, drop them in the chat or in the comments. We will answer them on the Wednesday stream. Michael, anything to add? You want to praise Varonis?
Yes. Awesome. Varonis, thank you for sponsoring this video and allowing us to hang out and share the news on Fridays.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see all of you next week. Have a good one. Bye.